This is Due South on WUNC News. I'm Jeff Tiberi. The honorable state lawmakers have gone home for now, having completed a state budget years overdue. What didn't they do in recent months?
And we've lobbed bills over to the other chamber time and again at this point. And I'm getting frustrated with chasing the goalpost about what we can do at this point.
We'll explore with two political reporters. And later, a much tastier offering on Due South as we explore Southern summer cuisine.
When I think of my Appalachian childhood, I go back to those delicious beans that we worked up, and I could eat them 7 days a week with no problem.
Due South begins after the news. Studios of WUNC News in Chapel Hill. It is Due South. I'm Jeff Tiberi. Welcome in. Glad to have you along. The North Carolina General Assembly has adjourned for now after approving a $34+ billion budget. It was the first comprehensive state spending plan since 2023. Yes, it's 2026. While the budget was the most notable and overdue piece of policy to earn final approval this year, there were plenty of other bills. Some made it to the floor for a vote. A smaller portion advanced to the governor's desk. Yet many others, a majority, in fact, of all proposals, sputtered out, banished to the legislative graveyard. However, at the legislature, bills can sort of come back to life. Here to tell us more about what notable legislation did not get to the finish line, why, and which proposals could potentially get a second chance. Colin Campbell, Capitol Bureau Chief at WUNC News, joins us on the line from our Legislative Bureau. He is across from Adam Wagner, editor and reporter at the North Carolina Newsroom, a collaborative effort between public radio stations across the state. Colin, Adam, welcome back to Due South.
Great to be here, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
All right. What's the most notable thing that did not happen at the Republican-controlled North Carolina General Assembly this year? Adam?
So this could still happen, but I think it is an overhaul of hemp regulations. We saw sort of at the 11th hour of this short session an agreement between the House and the Senate that would finally ban sales of hemp and kratom to people under 21, also sort of bring the state's hemp rules in line with federal standards that are coming up later this year. The Senate passed this, but by the time they had passed it, the House had already adjourned for basically a few weeks.
Okay.
They could address this, the House could, when they come back in July. Speaker of the House, Destin Hall, basically said, look, we got this Wednesday night. At that point, it was Thursday. We weren't able to review this overnight. Mm-hmm. We just need a minute to look over this and potentially pass it.
And this was simmering for several years. I mean,
right.
We've been hearing for a while that we have the sort of the Wild West of hemp. You can go buy a product underage that gives you the same kind of high as a marijuana joint, but marijuana is very much illegal in this state, and this is just open to anybody who sells it. So these shops we all see them on every corner, it seems like now. So this seemed to finally have some traction towards some kind of solution to this issue.
Yeah, Jeff, I was thinking back in prep for this. I was thinking back to last year when we did one of these sort of post-session roundups, and about 20 minutes of that conversation was about hemp and about the General Assembly's failure to move on hemp. So to Colin's point, this specific conversation, even this specific bill, have been simmering for a minute.
I feel like Bill Murray in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. All right, one quick follow-up here on hemp, and then I want to hear from Colin on his big didn't happen from the legislative session. But with this age limit thing, can someone who's 12 years old still theoretically go into a store and buy the hemp derivative that as Colin notes, has a psychoactive component to it?
Hypothetically, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's really on the stores to make their own regulations at this point, which is pretty wild.
That is pretty wild.
And there's also a piece of this that is not in this legislation around the labeling of these products. So a lot of them are pretty clearly mimicking candies, things like Sour Patch Kids, Skittles. Senator Michael Lee talked about buying a pre-roll that was labeled Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, my Lord.
So, that is not in this legislation, but is something that there are certainly members of the General Assembly that would like to address on the labeling piece later on down the road here.
And for those listening who might not be clear on this, I just want to underscore and lift this up. You can go into stores across the state legally, buy these liquids, these gummies, these I'm ignorant to this. Are there pre-rolled hemp joints, like almost like a marijuana joint?
There are, yeah.
Okay. I mean, you can go and you can buy these things legally, and there are no age restrictions on them, which, to quote one of our panelists here, is fairly wild. Chatting with Adam Wagner and Colin Campbell here on Due South about some of the many things that did not gain approval at the legislature this year, but were noteworthy or got debate or maybe moved out of a committee. Colin, what's the most notable thing from your seat that didn't see final passage?
So this one seemed like it was going to be a pretty easy lift. There seemed to be agreement that this was a problem. This is a property tax loophole involving large apartment complexes. The rules in North Carolina, if you are a nonprofit, a charity of some kind, you don't pay property taxes on the buildings that you own. Well, some apartment developers discovered that they could partner with a nonprofit and give them, as little as 1% ownership in a development project and qualify for this loophole that allows them to not have to pay any property taxes. So this seemed like something that legislators were really eager to close the loophole. It's costing local governments, particularly in the urban areas, tens of millions of dollars in property tax revenue a year at the same time when they're feeling the budget pinch and having to increase the property tax rate that all of us pay. This was something that passed the House unanimously and then just stalled out in the Senate. Never made it into the budget, never made it to a final vote, but seemed like something that everybody agreed that if you're a for-profit company and you own 98% of an apartment complex, you should probably pay property taxes for the services that you benefit from at the county and local level.
And as you know, tens of millions of dollars here. What was the opposition that ultimately held it up in the Senate, or was it administrative? They got bogged down with that. Like it moves to the House unanimously. Why doesn't it even get a vote in the Senate? If you know.
Yeah, and I don't think we've gotten a clear answer from Senate leadership on why they didn't take it up. Initially, there was seemingly agreement between both chambers that this particular issue was a problem, that something needed to be done, and I think maybe it got bogged down in the details of exactly how do you close the loophole without having some unintended consequences. And I suspect there are probably some powerful lobbyists for some of these residential development companies that would really like to keep this loophole.
Adam, a thought?
So the number in Wake County was $2.2 billion of apartment complexes that weren't paying property taxes last year. That is remarkably high.
$2.2 billion. I don't expect either of you to know this off the top of your head, but $2.2 billion is the bulk of the Wake County, maybe not the bulk of the Wake County budget, but I mean that's a percentage of the Wake County budget. I mean that's a ton of money. $2.2 billion.
Yeah, and it comes out then to
I think $60 million was the figure I saw, the actual taxes that they would be paying now do not have to pay.
Interesting. Let me just nudge listeners here real quick. If anything is on your mind, we are live on your radios and smart speakers until 12:40 today, so please send along questions, comments, perhaps other ruminations to Due South at WUNC.org. One other follow-up on hemp before it slips away, guys, which is there's a November 12th deadline at the federal level. Please remind us what is potentially or going to happen at that point and how that impacts state hemp regulations.
So basically, the federal government is enacting a new standard for hemp that I think it's a 0.4 milligrams per container, and then there's some other sort of more technical pieces of it. It's interesting because right now the Trump administration is pushing back on this proposed limit, basically saying, please don't enact this right away. North Carolina's lawmakers say that even if the federal government scales that back, they think that's a pretty good starting place. They would like to see what would be the federal limit be the state's limit, no matter what happens to it.
Similar to a drinking age.
Basically.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but this more is geared toward the kind of products that are being sold and the limits of the specific compounds that are in them.
Yeah, I think some of those, we just don't know what's in some of these products because there's not a regulatory framework for the ingredients, how they're manufactured. So some are in sort of a pharmaceutical grade facility. Some are being made in, some guy's garage with, potentially contaminants getting in there. And the federal government's trying to deal with that. At the same time, the state is trying to deal with, well, how do you regulate the sales and permits and understanding, whether people are 2021 to get by these or not.
Interesting. A break here in several moments, but first let's touch on some baseball and what didn't happen with potential funding for a stadium complex, stadium site development. What was in the cards and then what was no longer moving? Colin?
Yeah, so this came into the budget negotiations sort of the 11th hour last month of Raleigh was very interested in getting some legislation passed, some incentives funding put in the budget that should the Major League Baseball decide that they're going to expand teams and put one in North Carolina, specifically Raleigh, that the infrastructure to sort of attract them with a new stadium would be able to be funded through a mix of local tax dollars and state dollars. This was something Senate Leader Phil Berger, who himself is a baseball fan, was interested in getting in there. House Speaker Destin Hall seemed to have some reservations about putting tax dollars behind this kind of project. And so in the end, they just decided not to put this in the budget. I don't know that it's a dead issue because it could come back in future sessions, but I think there was a push, given the support in the Senate, for doing some kind of incentives package to try to get this through before Phil Berger leaves office at the end of the year. He lost his primary. He will not be in charge of the Senate come next year.
I thought the point that Speaker Hall made about this was really interesting, basically saying we don't want Raleigh to play all of its cards right now. No other city that is competing for what we all kind of expect to be two expansion teams is going to put all its cards forward, so why should we do that right now? Beyond that, to sort of that point, Major League Baseball hasn't even announced that there's going to be an expansion yet. Major League Baseball likely won't have a season next year because of a labor lockout. You know, they're in the middle of a big fight over a salary cap. So there's a lot of questions about the sport specifically that need to get answered before Speaker Hall says he's at a point where he knows exactly what Raleigh's incentives package and the state's commitment to this should look like.
And if you are listening to Adam Wagner and Colin Campbell here on Due South and going, why are these knuckleheads, including Jeff Tiberi in the knucklehead category, talking about Major League Baseball in Raleigh? Well, that just signals to me you did not hear our Tuesday program of Due South, which was all about baseball, the history of it here in the Old North State, and also this future, at this point, still theoretical desire to bring a Major League Baseball team here. As Adam Wagner alludes to, no firm expansion has been announced, but the commissioner of Major League Baseball has signaled he wants to expand with two teams, one in the East and one in the West, and Raleigh has dreams of having a Major League Baseball team. So you can learn more about that on Due South's Tuesday offering. We're just getting going with Colin and Adam here on Due South, talking about some of the policies that did not move forward this short legislative session. More in a moment, right here on listener-supported WUNC News. Welcome back. It's Due South on listener-supported WUNC News. I'm Jeff Tiberi, hanging out for about 20 more minutes with Adam Wagner, reporter and editor with the North Carolina Newsroom, a collaborative between public radio stations across the state, and Colin Campbell, Capitol Bureau Chief here at WUNC News. The General Assembly has gavelled out for the time being. They're scheduled to come back later this year, though what exactly they'll do for the remainder of the year remains somewhat of a question. The bulk of their work is done. And while the governor has signed some 106 bills during the 2025-2026 biennium, there are hundreds and hundreds more bills that did not reach his desk. We're chatting about some of those proposals that stalled out and some of the proverbial why with Colin and Adam here on Due South. Guys, let's turn our attention to data centers. Lots of attention both at the state level and locally about potential centers coming to various points across the state. Adam, what didn't happen here?
So let's start with the tax exemptions that data centers have in North Carolina. Under former law, data centers didn't pay sales tax on things like their electricity, their construction costs, or even their, like, when they swap out servers or HVAC equipment, any of that stuff. The state budget rolls back the exemption on electricity. So data centers will pay sales tax for the electricity now. It does not address any of those other pieces. Governor Josh Stein put forward a pretty detailed proposal to roll back the entire exemption package earlier this spring. He basically said that there should be no more data centers accepted into the program after this year, and that all the exemptions should be rolled back by 2032. This got pretty significant pushback from data center developers who said it would make North Carolina a way less attractive target for their projects.
And not to be overly snarky, but so what? Why is it in the best interest of the state to be open for business to data centers?
So data centers' arguments are that they are still, even with these exemptions, pretty significant property tax payers. In a lot of places where they are built, a lot of the rural corners of the state, a data center coming to town is going to pretty much instantly be the largest property tax account in that county. So think of like what Amazon is saying is a $10 billion project in Richmond County that they're seeking permits for right now. That on day one will boost that county's tax revenue.
Yeah, we saw that in, I think, Stokes County this week, which is north of Winston-Salem, probably best known for Hanging Rock State Park. The county commission there seems to be very bullish on data centers there because that would be a huge boost to their small county budget. But they had a big turnout at a public hearing of people who live there who really, really do not want data centers in their backyard.
And this was a project that the Stokes County Commission had already approved. They didn't go through some of the procedural steps correctly, so now they're having to go back and basically redo the whole thing, and seeing still very significant community pushback.
Maybe a throwaway here, but I'm good for at least a couple of those. There's long been this tension between the state and local municipalities on everything from water regulations to airport authorities. As it pertains to data centers, is there a growing rift, or is there any kind of notable tension between what localities do or do not want to do and what the state does or does not want to do?
So I don't think so yet. We are seeing a lot of moratoriums across the state. The General Assembly has done nothing to address moratoriums or mandate permitting or anything like that at this point. One bill that also didn't become law earlier this session was Senate Bill 730, which came out of the House, which is why I kind of stumbled there. It's a little confusing. It's one of these rewritten bills. And one of the things that would have done is banned local governments from offering their own incentive packages for data centers. So that would have been the state weighing in a little bit on that. Passed the House. It didn't go anywhere in the Senate. That legislation also involved a bunch of some things around the cooling that data centers would have done. It required DEQ to adopt some water resource standards, and there were some noise standards in there that would have been a little more prescriptive than what there is now from the statewide level. But again, that's waiting to be heard in the Senate.
Yeah, I feel like the big theme for this session was they were so focused on passing a budget that a lot of these things that are kind of complicated, kind of in the weeds once you actually get down to it, just didn't get across the finish line. And I think data centers is sort of on that issue where the lawmakers are still trying to educate themselves around the pros and cons of these and what the tax landscape and regulatory landscape should be.
Let's get briefly.
And the one thing they
Adam.
agreed on was this, from the get-go, the House and the Senate seemed to agree that the electricity sales tax exemption specifically should be rolled back. And then the broader exemption should be looked at, but there wasn't that sort of from the jump agreement.
Okay. I want to maybe just briefly try to get at the why here of why some things don't cross the finish line. You've alluded to maybe all of the reasons, right? We've got lobbying. We have the priorities of the body or bodies. If the budget hasn't been done, that obviously takes a lot of air out of the room. Things can be held hostage, right? I'm over here in the House. I want to do X, but you, Colin, are in the Senate. And you say, yeah, you can do X if you do Y over here. Some horse trading, so to speak. Why else, if there are other notable reasons, do things not move forward?
Yeah, I think those are the biggies, and certainly, to sort of peel back the process here, a lot of times you see these bills, the House does one version of it, the Senate does another version of it, and then you get to the conference committee stage, which is a couple of the bill sponsors on either side essentially having some private meetings to hash out their differences. And so I think really the clock ran out on a lot of these. These are lawmakers, the folks in leadership are having all these meetings about the budget. They just could not find time before they adjourned right before the July 4th holiday to sort of get in a room and hash out the finer points of some of these things between the House and Senate and get them across the finish finish line. Now, that could still happen as we get later in the year and they come back for some brief sessions, but I think the abbreviated nature of a short session, they came in late April, we're trying to finish before July 4th, just didn't allow time for a lot of these sort of backroom conversations to take place.
I'd add another step in there.
Please.
Then once the conference report piece is done, you have to take it back to your caucus and then sell it to your caucus before you get back to the full House. So there were a lot of times this session where we were waiting for the session to begin because the House caucus, the House Republican caucus specifically, was having several hour-long meetings about specific bills. I think the elections bill certainly seemed like it was one of those.
The hemp was one where they just didn't see if enough Republicans in the House were on board with what their final agreement with the Senate looked like.
Colin, Campbell, and Adam Wagner joining us from our legislative studios in downtown Raleigh on 16 West Jones Street. As a friendly reminder, there are some 70 Republicans in the North Carolina House. There are some 30 Republicans in the North Carolina Senate. And those caucus meetings that Colin and Adam are alluding to, it's much harder to get consensus from a majority of 70 plus than it is 30 plus. Colin mentioned a moment ago the clock running out, so I want to use that as an in toward election law. We're a mere 111 days from the November 3rd election, but perhaps more notably, we're only 50 days until absentee ballots go out. We'll get to election law that didn't happen in a moment, but from a timing standpoint, is the door still open for election law changes, best you can discern?
I think so. They are planning to come back at the end of July, and I think if there was a consensus to do something on election law changes, that could be largely implemented before ballots start to get printed as we get into August and September. I think the sort of sweeping changes that we thought might happen, that we might see cuts to the early voting period. There was a controversial provision I think that was eventually just deleted from the bill in the House that would have prevented election officials from doing kind of get out the vote efforts. Like right now, if you're a county elections board member or you work for the elections board, you can't say I want you to go out and vote for candidate A, but you can go say, I want everyone to come out and vote. It's important to do your civic duty, that sort of thing. And there was a fairly controversial proposal to stop them from doing that. That is no longer in the bill. So maybe we see some minor changes on election laws as we get later in the year. But certainly the most sweeping, most controversial things seem to have kind of run aground through opposition. Some of them on the Republican side, but certainly that was the one bill that caused a couple days where we had a couple hundred protesters here at the legislative building opposing that.
To follow up briefly on things that might have run aground, we have, I believe, still 17 days of early voting in our state. Is that on the table for any kind of cut or limitation or alteration?
The discussion earlier in the session, this never really showed up in a bill, was that Senate Leader Phil Berger, who incidentally lost his primary in part because a lot of the early vote did not go his way up in his district, wanted to see a shorter early voting period, particularly on the primary side. He said it was we had too many days where there wasn't much turnout, enough justification for the cost of doing it. But that never really seemed to take off. The other thing that we're watching on early voting outside the legislative building is the process of setting the schedules at the county level going towards November, and that's happening pretty much ongoing in all 100 counties headed towards a State Board of Elections meeting in August.
We are chatting with Colin and Adam here on Due South. Colin Campbell, Adam Wagner, and taking some of your questions as well. Harold in Durham emails in, one of your panelists just referred to, quote, powerful lobbyists, close quote, who might have influenced the NC Senate in a recent deliberation. Question from Harold, what makes a lobbyist powerful? Or more precisely, what gives a lobbyist the power to more likely influence legislation as compared to other lobbyists?
That's a great question. Some of it is, there's various metrics to rate the influence level of lobbyist. I think some of the most powerful lobbyists in this building are former lawmakers themselves who have gone into lobbying. They have friendships and relationships with the people currently in office. Some names that come to mind are former Senate Rules Chairman Tom Apodaca has a pretty powerful lobbying firm. Former Republican Party Chairman and Raleigh Mayor Tom Fetzer is one. There are several others like that. Former House Speaker Harold Brubaker who get a lot of, they do contract lobbying. They're not just for one entity, one set of interests, but they may have dozens of different clients in different industries, and they're representing their interest and very much able to get in the door, sort of make their concerns known to the lawmakers who are making these decisions on whether a bill moves forward or not.
I think the other piece we can't overlook here is campaign cash. If you are from if you're representing an industry that has the ability to stir up a lot of campaign contributions.
Duke Energy. I'll throw
Duke
one
Energy,
out there.
I was on the tip of my tongue too, but the NC Chamber is one of those.
Hospitals.
If you are a major donor to most of the important people in this building, which a lot of these groups we just mentioned are, you may not necessarily get your agenda passed every time, but you can certainly slow things down and you can certainly stop some things that you object to, and we see that a lot in the healthcare and energy spaces.
Mm-hmm. Thanks to Harold for the question. I'll also note that there are plenty of entities like the Hospital Association or Duke Energy that, at least when I was at the legislature, were donating to both parties. They were playing both sides of the fence, if you will. Let's turn to environmental didn't happen. Specifically, I want to ask you, Adam Wagner, about coastal hardened structures, so-called jetties or groins. We talked about this back, and that's how the Southern folks say it. We talked about this several times on Due South previously, but what was initially on the table to change coastal hardened structure regulation, and why didn't it pass, if we know the why?
So there has been basically a 4-decade ban on hardened structures on North Carolina's coast. There have been a couple very limited exemptions to this. There's currently up to 4 terminal groins are allowed. I think there's 2 on the coast right now. Some coastal lawmakers wanted to repeal that ban, and they also wanted to make it possible for state money to be able to be used for some of these terminal groin projects to protect parts of the coast that are seeing basically really significant erosion. Those really haven't gone anywhere yet. I'm not sure what the why is. I know that there is a lot of support for them among the Senate Republican caucus, which is where they started. There are questions about kind of the science of this, that if you do something to one part of the coast, are you going to keep sand from going to the neighboring part of the coast, or are you going to cause more wave damage to a neighboring part of the coast? But I don't think that's why they haven't moved quite yet. I think this is one that we should probably keep an eye on later this year, because there are certainly parts of the coast. Colin's highlighted the Buxton area on Hatteras Island and around there that are seeing really severe impacts in really kind of dramatically fast time periods.
I'm seeking a quick fact check here. I want to widen the lens, and you all help round this out. The legislative short session is ostensibly over, but lawmakers are going to come back several times this year. There's nothing major on the docket, but theoretically, they have until December 31st to do what they want and or potentially even resurrect a bill that might have seemingly died in committee or gone astray or to legislative Siberia in some other way. Is that a fair way to conjure this up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's various sort of workarounds that you could get a brand new proposal out in addition to any of the other things that we've talked about and they've considered since they came in at the beginning of 2025. Anytime between now and the end of the year, they've got a scheduled date at the end of July that they're coming back. But what we've seen in years past is they'll put some dates on the calendar, maybe one a month, going all the way to the end of the year. And sometimes they'll gavel in, gavel out, not do a thing. Other times they might be in town for a few days. And one thing I think we're all looking out for is, depending on how the November election goes, there's going to be a lame duck session in November or December where, if Republicans are not going to have as much power next year, maybe they lost a supermajority, maybe they even lost either the majority in the House or Senate, they're going to want to pass a lot of things that they may not have the votes to pass once we get into 2027. So, it's kind of over, but also kind of not over as we get towards the end of the year.
And just to be clear, any of these bills that have made crossover are live, basically. So lawmakers can take anything that has been sent from the other chamber, go in, and completely rewrite it. It doesn't have to be about the same thing at all, and start moving that as a different piece of legislation. So they have options.
Yeah, zombie bills are definitely things that happen pretty regularly in this building.
Called gut and amend, and anything can seemingly anything could see the light of day again, but by the time December 31st rolls around. We've only got a couple more moments, but I wanted to ask each of you, you guys are immersed in this world, these proposals. When the session started, the short session several months ago, was there anything that you anticipated that's going to be a priority. That's likely going to see the finish line, the legislative finish line, so to speak, and did not. What was surprising to you that it didn't advance, if there were any surprises from your seats?
I was surprised that we didn't see more constitutional amendments. This is something when you have an election year where Republicans are looking like they might have a tough time. 2018 was an example of this. You see a lot of constitutional amendments that sort of are geared towards getting Republican voters out of the polls. And we had several of these passed this session to put a cap on the income tax rate, one to sort of have unspecified limitations on increases in local property taxes. But then there were several others that passed the House and never really went anywhere, including a constitutional amendment that would elect the state Board of Education. That's currently appointed by the governor, of course, who's a Democrat. There was a right to work enshrined in the Constitution, anti-union law that was out there, a right to farm constitutional amendment that did not move forward. And it's possible, I guess, they could take these up before ballots go out. But so far, the Senate seems to not be as interested in loading up the ballot with constitutional amendments that are of interest to conservative voters.
Remind us real quick, Adam, I'm coming to you for one in a moment. I've got a minute for you. But Colin, how many constitutional amendments are voters likely or assuredly going to see on the ballot this fall?
So definitely 3, the 2 tax-related ones that I just mentioned, as well as one that takes the voter ID requirement and puts it onto absentee mail-in ballots in addition to in-person voting. So those we definitely will see in November. And then there was all these other ones. We could have seen up to 7 or 8 total on the ballot in November had all of these passed both chambers.
Adam, anything that surprised you that didn't pass this session?
I'm going to return to where Colin started. I think that the Blue Ridge housing exemption not passing is a surprise. It felt like if lawmakers are going to tinker with the property tax side of things, they also need to tinker with some of the exemption pieces to put some revenue back into local governments. And that felt like a fairly obvious one, and that everyone was kind of on board with and just didn't go.
Colin Campbell is Capitol Bureau Chief here at WUNC News. Adam Wagner is a reporter and editor at the North Carolina Newsroom. That is a collaborative effort between public radio stations across the state. Colin, Adam, thank you both.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
If you're not already signed up, check out the WUNC Politics newsletter as well as the WUNC Politics podcast. Weekly offerings keeping you up to date, up to snuff on what is happening. And yes, as we've been discussing here, what is not happening at your state legislature. Thanks to Ben McNeely, who produced this conversation. Still ahead this hour, Chef Sheri Castle shares summer recipes to keep you cool. She's host of The Key Ingredient with Sheri Castle, an Emmy award-winning program on PBS. We'll talk summer tips and watermelon. That's ahead here on Due South from listener-supported WUNC News.
This is Due South on WUNC News. I'm Leoneda Inge. And dadgummit, if it's not one hot summer, I know how I've been staying cool. A lot of chilled fruit, even frozen, namely watermelon, maybe blueberries, just some of the fruits we grow and export in North Carolina. How are you staying cool this summer? Send us a message with your summer heat hacks to dewsouth@wunc.org. Now we bring you someone I consider an expert when it comes to putting together the right food and ingredients for the right season. Sheri Castle is a food writer, chef, and cooking educator based in northern Chatham County. She's the creator and host of The Key Ingredient on PBS and a featured columnist at Our State Magazine. Sheri Castle, welcome back to Due South.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Well, Sheri, what are you cooking these days? For some reason, I'm hearing a lot about watermelon and feta salads. I mean, something like that. What do you think?
Well, I do tend to assemble things more often than cook them when it is as hot as it is right now. And you're right, it is a scorcher, an unrelenting stretch of scorching days. So I do try to buy things that don't need a lot to be done to them, things that are in season, ripe, flavorful, good texture, the minute I bring them home. So watermelon salad can be a really good one. A lot of people do like feta cheese, but I want to suggest right out of the gate a different cheese to try.
Please, because I'm not a feta fan.
Well, not everyone is. Feta is one of those divisive cheeses, and it crumbles and can make a real mess in that watermelon juice. There is a cheese called ricotta salata, and it is a form of the sweet, beautiful ricotta cheese that we normally buy loose to put in lasagna and so forth. Well, there's a version where they press the whey out of it into a little white block of cheese. It is tender, but it is not bland, mild, interesting, and you can cut it into cubes that don't crumble and make the mess of feta. And it's what I put in all of my fruit-based salads instead. Easy to find in any grocery store, keeps well, and it's not expensive.
I like that. Let's stay on the theme of salads. What other salads are good right now?
Well, I want people to think about that old adage of what grows together goes together, and to consider combinations that they've not tried before. I am currently on a kick where I am combining tomatoes, sweet corn, peaches, or another stone fruit, and maybe some fresh mozzarella, maybe some little green beans or cucumbers, and making a basil lemonade dressing. So you've got color, texture, crunch. And so if you see things that appeal to you, don't hesitate by saying, I've never had tomatoes and fruit. Try tomatoes and fruit. It could lead to all sorts of innovation with something you already have on your counter or in the refrigerator.
I like that. I want to backtrack to watermelon. I did not ask you if you are a seedless or seeded person.
Well, I'm both. I know full well that watermelons with seeds are going to taste better. I really believe that. It tends to be some of the more traditional varieties that were grown for flavor as opposed to convenience. I also embrace convenience. So I'll be honest, I do a little bit of both. Sometimes I just need a little watermelon and I'll buy one of those. It's not much larger than a cantaloupe. They tend to be seedless. It's enough to last me a day or two. But sometimes I will invest in one of the good old oblong heavy ones, and then just all it needs is salt and to lean over the sink.
For a couple of days, those big ones takes forever to eat them, though.
It does. It is hard. It is hard to do that. But if you make a salad, if you have some just, like a picnic wedge, I do put salt on mine. Not everyone does. I think it makes them taste sweeter with a little salt. Sometimes I'll put green chili or chipotle powder or something, and then I'll make salads. You can add cubes of watermelon with tomatoes and cucumbers, a little lime juice, and a big handful of fresh herbs. And it's that same watermelon, but it's in a different way to sustain your interest. And when those salads start getting a little too juicy, buzz them up in a food processor and make watermelon gazpacho.
Oh my goodness, you're blowing me away. You mentioned lemonade, basil lemonade dressing, for example. And I've been noticing in the grocery store that I frequent a lot, just more flavored lemonades. And they say the fruit is fresh, but I am purchasing for the first time in the grocery store watermelon lemonade. And, they have the different kind of berry lemonades and the peach lemonades and the mango lemonades. Is that something new? Like when you mention, these flavored drinks and how you can just press and pour now.
I think they're new in our markets. I think people have been playing with this at home for a long time. We know that a lot of times you add lemon, not only for its acidity, but to keep other fruits from discoloring. It may have been born out of that, but it's just a way to add interest to a familiar beverage. And people should play with that. I mean, if you've got juice, if you've cut up something and you've got juice, rather than pouring it down the sink, pour it in a glass, add something else. If it works, you have a whole new beverage. If it doesn't, you were going to have washed it away anyhow.
I guess so. Now, you mentioned what grows together, tastes good together when you eat it. So are you growing anything right now, or are you frequenting somebody else's patch?
Well, I frequent other people's patches and I spend a lot of time in farmers markets. Where I happen to live, I'm out in the woods and the deer have decided I cannot grow anything. They've made it pretty clear that that's not an option. So I'm letting the farmers markets, by and large, do my growing for me. And of course, grocery stores as well. But some people only frequent farmers markets in the summer and I celebrate that. But there are roadside stands. There are people selling things off the back of pickups. I've seen around the triangle anyhow a great increase of small farmers that bring a pickup and go in the corner of a parking lot. I saw one at a service station the other day, a farmer I knew. So if people keep their eyes open, it is a short distance to local food.
Oh, yes, it is. This is Due South on WUNC News. I'm speaking with Sheri Castle. She's a food writer, chef, and cooking educator, and the host and creator of The Key Ingredient on PBS. So, Sheri, what does summer entertaining with Sheri Castle look like?
It is pretty low key. Everyone needs to be able to wear their shorts and T-shirts or whatever makes them happy. I find that people like to pitch in the summer in ways that they don't do in other seasons for some reason. So rather than having everything ready, put out a spread. Set up a sandwich bar, good tomatoes, some avocados, cheese, cold cuts if you want them, and let people assemble their own sandwiches or salad plates and so forth. It is both your dinner and some entertainment, and it certainly does cut down on the work on your end.
A summer sandwich. I've been trying to perfect an avocado type sandwich, not necessarily toast, but just trying to, like you say, use what's out there. So what are some good sandwiches this summer? Are you trying anything new?
Am I trying anything new? Well, even though we're talking about cold things, I, many years ago, purchased a panini press, and it had been on the shelf for a while, and I pulled it down, and I'm rediscovering the pleasures of paninis. And you don't want to put juicy things inside, but I've been making these crisp, thin, delicious little grilled cheese paninis, putting that on the plate and then piling the vegetables and toppings on top of that. Sort of a knife and fork sandwich, but not too fussy, not too pressy. So I've been doing that, and I have been playing around with different sandwich spreads. I'm a mayo girl. Heart and soul, I'm a mayo girl. But you can also use a flavored cream cheese or maybe a soft cheese or maybe some pesto or, just take what you know and move over one notch. If you've always done basil pesto, try sun-dried tomato or try a lemon pesto. If you're tired of pesto, try an olive tapenade. Take what you know, move over one notch, and get yourself out of a rut.
Are your guests, are they happy? They like these changes? Is that panini grilled cheese, is that a hit?
That is a huge hit, a huge hit. And, if we don't want to do that, then have a variety of breads. It doesn't always have to be sandwich bread. Split some baguettes. Get some focaccia. Use some leftover cornbread. A leftover cornbread sandwich can sometimes really hit the spot. So I'm not reinventing the sandwich. I'm just swapping roles of the different components.
That sounds pretty cool. Is it too hot to eat a lot of meat this summer? I know some meat, beef can be even pricey, but are you grilling out? Are you cooking at all?
I am grilling occasionally, and I tend to do batches of things like, let's grill a batch of wings, a lot of them, or let's do a batch of, seafood or something, and then let that be a condiment, sort of, a grace note to the meal rather than the foundation of the meal. If I cook one steak, I may eat a little bit of it warm, but I'm going to have sliced steak on a sandwich or on a salad or, wrapped up in a tortilla or something for several days. And so I think if I'm going to fire it up, make it count, but then get multiple meals out of that effort.
So we talked about meat a little bit and sandwiches. If you notice, I'm wearing my Bitter Southerner t-shirt that says crabs, shrimp, oysters, and Crawfish.
That's a grouping right there.
I know. So what about seafood this summer? Any shrimp salads? I think I've been eating anything I can pick up that they say shrimp is in it. I've just been getting it.
Shrimp is always a crowd pleaser. It is, and it cooks in seconds, literally in seconds. And in a lot of our grocery stores and our seafood markets, you can get pre-cooked shrimp ready to go that all you have to do is open the lid, but then you can recombine it with things. Put some shrimp on that salad, maybe cook a little pasta, throw in a handful of fresh cherry tomatoes, little shrimp, couple of capers. You mentioned shrimp salad. I do a shrimp salad BLT, where literally I take my cooked shrimp, put some lemon and mayo on it, and add that to a classic BLT, and it reinvents both.
So what makes a dish Southern to you? I mean, is it just the ingredients that are found in the South? And that's one thing. You know, we have a lot of offerings because of our climate, for example. But is it the place settings? Is it the music? I don't know, the people?
It's a little bit of all that, but to me, one through line in Southern food is you have the taste of right here. So we're sitting in Durham. And if we were to go to the Durham Farmers Market, we would see certain varieties of field peas, certain kinds of peaches, certain kinds of corn. If I go up to where I grew up in the mountains in Watauga County, we're going to have some of those things, but they're going to be different varieties. And to me, that's where the Southernness comes in, that local point of pride, that taste of right there, that it may not be the field pea or the variety of peach or the variety of apple that you know, but it's going to be good. And always take advantage of your local specialties.
You know, I always love hearing your stories about your family and food. Anything comes to mind when you think of summer and growing up?
Well, we ate lots and lots of beans, green beans, the old-fashioned pole beans that you had to string, get those delicious, well, I think, to me, strings are a sign of deliciousness in beans, where you'd sit on the porch in the evening or out on the carport and string and break beans, eat all you could hold every night, and then put them up and can them for the winter. So when I think of my Appalachian childhood, I go back to those delicious beans that we worked up, and I could eat them 7 days a week with no problem.
Do you mean beans that are cooked and canned? Or are you eating them hot or cold or?
Well, we did a little bit of both. We ate them, cooked them fresh, after we strung and broke them and so forth. We also would pickle a few, make a thing called dilly beans, which, were the whole beans in a jar with sort of the same sort of brine you would make a good dill pickle. But up in the mountains, we did some fermentation that is very specific to Western North Carolina and East Tennessee, where we fermented some of the beans and corn. We called it pickle beans, but it's not truly pickled. It's fermented, and I'm one of the few practitioners left still doing that, and I'm trying to teach people. I want people to preserve those wonderful old ways. And we dried beans, made a thing called leather britches. They're also known as shuck beans. We actually dried the beans in their pods, and of course we canned. And when I say we canned dozens and dozens and dozens, of course. Just for me and my little family, I put up 52 quarts of beans last summer because I'm like that.
Oh, my goodness. I can't imagine. Well, before we go, I have to mention, going back to the meat, the hot dog, I don't know, the turkey dog, the sausage dog, the beef dog, however you like it, and the toppings for that dog. I mean, any recommendations? I don't know. I think hot chili, I don't know. Is it too hot outside to put chili on a dog right now? I like slaw, maybe.
Well, I was raised on what we call slaw dogs, the very variety you're talking about there. The standard go-to topping, whether we made hot dogs at home or got it at a local eatery, was going to be that very finely grained chili, creamy coleslaw, probably some raw onion, and yellow mustard. But I find that people are as particular about their hot dog toppings. They're imprinted as children, and however your town made hot dogs is how people want hot dogs now. Now, I'll eat one with some kraut on it. I'll eat other toppings, but at the end of the day, when hot dog appears in my mind, it's slaw and chili, onion, and yellow mustard.
All at one time.
All at one time.
Well, Sheri Castle is a chef, food writer, recipe creator, and the host and creator of The Key Ingredient on PBS. Thank you so much. I enjoy talking food with you.
Anytime, my friend.
Oh,
Anytime.
Yeah, we can keep going. Well, you've been listening to Due South on WUNC News. I'm Leoneda Inge.
Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious, because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.